Welcome back, folks. You're watching Sport Federation TV. Here, of course, talking about sport in the Western Cape and the various sport structures that are structured across the country. In studio with us is Ken Gliddon. Ken is the chairperson of Western Cape Rowing. Ken, just before the break, we were talking about some of the dynamics, the physical dynamics of the athletes. Of course, one of the things that we see a lot is in any gym nowadays, there's a rowing machine for general fitness. Does that work? I mean, is there a real connection between what we see in the average gym and the high performance level that you guys practice?
There is. If you speak to any rower, the first thing that they'll tell you is that ergs don't float. The erg machine, a bit like licorice, you either love it or you hate it.
Is the erg machine those machines we see?
Those are the machines.
Right.
Now, that is a very, very good yardstick. It's a good test.
Yeah.
The distance that is tested in rowing is over a 2,000 meter distance for the more senior athletes. Up to under 16, you'd race 1,000 meters. Over under 16, you'd race 2 kilometers. It's designed to get physically the most out of you.
Yeah.
Again, Luke, who recently took part in the World Championships, pulled a 6 minute and 1 second 2 kilometer. Now it's important to note that Luke is 55 years old.
Is he one of our
Western Cape
Western
athletes?
Cape athletes?
And to give you an idea there, the closest schoolboy rower that we've got in the Western Cape to that is 6 minutes 15 seconds. So he showed the kids up. And that was a world record, by the way.
So talk to us a little bit about the participation of rowing in the Western Cape.
Yeah.
You've obviously got a lot of schools that are, I'm assuming that's the entry point for rowing is.
We do.
Most of your kids do they join a school, start at school, or do they go to a club first?
Well, again, very good point that you raised there. Traditionally, rowing has always been a school sport. So rowing schools have always pretty much dictated the audience,
right,
and the accessibility, more importantly, to rowing. In the Western Cape, I firmly believe that that's a base, but that's not the way that it should be run, and club rowing should be more prevalent. To that end, we have been, over the course of the last 2 years, changing the structures quite significantly. And I used the word there, access to water and access to equipment. We're going more towards a club-based model in the Cape Town Metro, and then obviously further afield.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that we're going to downplay school rowing.
Yeah.
But we have to broaden the access to the sport.
Right. So that's leads us to a great topic then. In how do you start a rowing club? What do you need?
First and foremost,
water, I suppose.
Water. Yeah. Traditionally, what would have had to have happened is you'd have to go and buy a lot of very, very expensive boats.
Yeah.
I think it's important to note here that the University of the Western Cape were in a similar position 18 months ago. And with the assistance of the Peninsula Girls Rowing Club, i.e. using their boats, they've been able to get a club together in a very short space of time without having to worry about the burden of maintaining boats and maintaining equipment. So a shared resource there worked for everyone.
How are we doing from a women's sport perspective? Are we seeing women rowing?
Something very close to my heart, yes. I, in fact, am very involved in the Peninsula Girls Rowing Club,
right?
Based down at Circuflay. Traditionally, something that's not been part of the sport, and something that we're now pushing a lot more.
Yeah.
The bit that I'm incredibly encouraged by is that through the University of the Western Cape, we have more female rowers now than we have male.
Wow. Okay.
A huge demographic change, and a wonderful thing. On that note as well, and it's important to sort of highlight, what we've had to do is also reconsider the boats.
Right.
We have to remember that a lot of these boats were designed for school kids, traditionally boys. And a huge amount of work has gone on recently to looking at the compatibility of the seats, the size of the boats, the position of the boats, to make it all more comfortable. And as we all know, as soon as you're comfortable in a sport, you tend to perform a lot better.
Are the boats all standard, or are they customized for the athlete?
They're normally done by weight class.
Okay.
So you'd have a lightweight boat and a heavyweight boat.
Yeah.
But traditionally, no real consideration was given to female athletes in the boats. It was just assumed that they could row in a men's boat.
But I mean, when the athletes are competing, Oxford,
yeah, I mean,
are the boats all? I mean, if you look at Formula One, for example, all cars have to be identical.
Yeah, there are weight limits. There are when you go to a regatta, you'd have to weigh your boat in.
Yeah.
There are size limits, length. That you have to be within the parameters of. But for certain crews, a lot of the boats do get customized.
So when you guys go, for example, when you compete in another province or you have to compete internationally, do you have to take your boat with you?
Internationally, you'd normally rent boats when you were there.
Right.
It's not the sort of thing that even fits on a plane.
Yes.
And I tow them a lot. But nationally, yes, we would take 2 or 3 trailers full of boats up to Johannesburg for a big regatta.
Is it also a sport, like a little bit like life-saving, where an athlete might own their own boat, or surf skiing, where you might own your own boat?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, we have quite a few athletes that have their own sculls, and they'd sort of keep them in the shed. But it does get very expensive to transport around. As an entry-level rower, there are more than enough boats to come along and use in the province.
And the rowing format, you have single rowing, double rowing, up to 8 people in a boat?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So singles, doubles, quads, and 8s.
Yeah.
For the entry levels, there's an octuple, which is 16 blades. So it looks like a caterpillar sometimes. Yeah. And the one to learn to row as soon as you possibly can is the scull. You'd find your balance and you'd find how to row properly.
So one of the things also that occurs to me as we're talking about this is that that the rowing itself is more than just the single or the individuals that are in the boat. You've also got, when we look at this on TV, you've got someone calling the count, and it also looks like you've got a crew in a boat next to the rowers.
That's right.
So you must have participation for rowing much more than just rowers who can physically compete.
That's it. It's a participation sport. Typically in our scenario, and I'm quite passionate about it, there is always a safety officer on the water.
Right.
So the people that you sort of normally hear shouting out would be the coaches. And they would also be a watching eye on a boat capsizing or something happening in the water. The person in the boat that shouts the instructions is the cox, or the coxswain. And again, as we saw in this year's Oxford-Cambridge, races can be won and lost by the cox.
Right.
A lot of decision-making gets taken there, and typically you'll sort of tend to find at the big boat races that the cox will be the person that determines whether you win or lose.
How do I get started? For anybody who's watching the TV show now, and they're watching this and they're going, they've seen these fantastic pictures, they've heard about all these world-class athletes that you've got in the Western Cape, and they've listened to you tell the story of rowing in the province. How would the average person get started?
Really, really rather simple. Come along. A word of warning, it is a very early morning sport.
Yeah, right.
So rowers sort of tend to get up very early and go to sleep very early.
But you join a club?
There are a number of open days now in the build-up to the season, which starts in about August, September.
Yeah.
The winter is, in the Western Cape, probably the best time to row because the water's flat and there's not much wind. But we have a website, wcrowing.co.za.
Yeah.
And make an inquiry and come along.
So that's wcrowing.co.za.
Correct.
And people can find out more about you and how to join.
There's a page on there. Come along to an open day, get in a boat, and have some fun.
Have some fun.
The one thing I will say is that it is an addictive sport. A lot of people describe it as a lifestyle sport.
Yes.
Because you tend to socially spend a lot of time with the people that you row with.
Fantastic.
Once you're in it, difficult to get out.
Ken, thanks for joining us. We're looking forward to having you and some of the athletes in the studio with us again soon, and we can't wait to find out more.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
There we go. There we go, folks. Ken Gliddon, of course, chairperson of Western Cape Rowing. We are super excited about rowing in the Western Cape. So many athletes coming through the ranks. They're competing nationally. They're winning medals. They're going overseas and getting world championship rankings. And of course, we're looking forward to seeing what comes at the Olympic structures as well. But you heard it there firsthand. Go to www.wcrowing.co.za and find a club near you. Get on the water and start rowing. It's an addictive sport. Well, take a break. When we come back, we carry on talking about sport in the province. Don't go away.